December, the time of year when reality seems to buckle and split, a single braided rope fraying into parallel manic and depressive strands. Holiday cheer everywhere, LED lights and joyous inflatable Santas in the front yards, all framed by the unendingly gray sky, sun setting at 4 p.m. cold and miserable. Cars skid on the invisible black ice and end up in snowbanks or flying into a mailbox decorated with paper snowflakes. People dress up in layers and go running in the snow, exerting themselves to their limits so their bodies won't succumb to the deadly numb of cold. Misery, depression, and stress pile up inside homes as their inhabitants try to find the right Christmas present, the one that'll make someone happy. It was easier when there was still snow. You remember just last year that awful blizzard, the one that broke all the young trees into pieces and covered everything with uncaring endless white until all the contours of the world broke down. You remember looking out your window and seeing an alien landscape of smooth, sparkling white, where your neighborhood used to be. You remember the agonizing months going by, the snow melting just enough in the day to refreeze into a hard sheet of ice at night. You remember, by March, wishing that it would never snow again. This year is worse. This year there isn't snow. It's not quite cold enough to snow. It's still cold, but a nasty in-between cold, not a proper cold. It's the climate change. You read a few headlines about it, but knowing about it doesn't really compare to the moment you step outside in a t-shirt and windbreaker and start sweating. Something's wrong about that, but you only realize what when you get home from school at 4, looking at the way twilight paints the trees black. It's December. You're sweating, and it's December. You miss the snow. The neighbor's magnolia tree is budding, taking the earth's cue that it's spring already, and you find yourself feeling sorry for a plant. If somehow it does freeze this year, the buds will get shocked and fall off, and come spring, you won't get to see the magnificent blooms that coat everything in a layer of giant pink petals. Now, seeing the magnolia's buds just make you sad. There's other problems from the warm December too. There's still bugs. You wake up Monday morning itching your arm, and after a coffee you have the presence of mind to look down. A red bug bite sits in the crook of your elbow, inflamed skin screaming for you to scratch it. A bug bite. In December, you curse all mosquitoes, their ancestors, their descendants, and God for good measure. You scratch until it stops itching and starts hurting. Then you put on a long sleeve shirt and try to forget about it as you go to school. You've never been good at self-restraint. You're not surprised that it's still red and puffy by dinner time, but you're working on being more responsible, so you put calamine lotion on it. It tingles. The pink liquid cakes on, and it's right in the bend of the elbow, so you can tell that you'll be shedding dried pieces of pink crap every time you move in your sleep. But the itching stops, and that's all you really wanted. You wake up Tuesday morning sweating. The heater had barely been running all month, leaving the house uncomfortably chilly, but it finally kicked on last night, and when you wake up, your mouth is cotton, your sheets a heat-trapping prison. It's so awful that you take a cold shower before going to school. The rest of the day is surprisingly good, though. The shower reset your mood and you're feeling better. You even forget about the stupid bug bite on your arm. You wonder if it's going to get cold enough to go ice skating. You hope so. Wednesday morning, you're too hot again, and the dry heat has irritated your skin. Your bug bite had faded from a swollen red lump, but the mosquitoes continue their vengeance, and there's a coin-sized red rash in the crook of your elbow. It itches. The dry air is making your whole body itch too, your skin protesting the lack of moisture in your room. You wonder if you should get a humidifier. That whole day you can't stop scratching, not just your stupid bug bite, but your arms, shoulders, calves. The feeling is driving you insane, and people give you weird looks. On the way home, you go to the 99-cent store and get the cheapest bottle of lotion money can buy. There's a nice pink flower on the front, and you don't have any allergies, so you'll probably be fine. You cover your entire body in the greasy stuff before going to bed. Only as you hit the pillow do you remember that you still don't have a humidifier. Thursday, the rash is still there. Something's wrong, though. It covers more of the inside of your elbow than it did yesterday. You gently close your arm to check, watching the skin fold. No. Yes. It definitely is larger. You must have scratched it too much yesterday. It's still itching today, and you rub some of the cheap lotion into it before getting dressed. It helps. Not enough, but some. Maybe you're finally getting the eczema that's been passed down your bloodline. It was one of those genetic things you had been hoping to avoid, like lactose intolerance. But you can't spend any more time thinking about it. Thinking about it just makes you need to scratch more, and you haven't done any of your Christmas shopping yet. After school, you stop by the Barnes & Nobles. You mean to get something nice for your brother, but instead, you end up buying a hot chocolate from the Starbucks inside. It's still 2 weeks away, and the crush of people inside buying gifts is a little overwhelming. The itchiest part of your body is now your shoulders. The skin prickles, catching even against the soft fabric of your t-shirt. You scratch and scratch, hoping to ease the pressure for longer than 30 seconds. But even when you scratch too hard and feel pain, it doesn't relieve the need to scratch. You can't do any homework that night. The itching is driving you to distraction. You look at yourself in the mirror before you step in the shower and your breath catches in your throat. Thick red lines on your shoulders, furrows from your own fingernails. The rash on your arm is red and large from all the scratching, and the same coin-sized rash you found in your elbow is now right under your rib cage. You frown, scratching it absently. You don't remember getting bitten there. Did you? Sleep that night is hard. You dream of something soft under your mouth. It tastes sweet, and you extend your tongue again and again to lap at it. It's a nice dream, but it's still too hot in your bedroom, and you keep half waking up, sweaty and itchy, rolling and scratching until you can sleep again and return to the pleasant escape of the dream. You wake up. Your skin is tingling. You've just got a lot of dead skin. That's the problem. You've got to get rid of it. Once you can scratch off all the dead skin, you won't feel itchy anymore. And it seems to work. You scratch until you're red. You scratch through the skin, down to the clear fluid underneath, and it's exhilarating. You breathe deeply for the first time all day when your nails come away wet. The relief is unlike anything else you've felt before. And then you fall into a frenzy. You're scratching everywhere you can reach, tearing it all off. Your skin gives beneath your bruised, bloody fingernails. You keep scratching, and scratching, and scratching, and scratching, and scratching. Your hands are wet. Your fingernails hurt, but you're so close. Strengthening your grip, you scrape away the last thing that itches. Your dry scalp. It comes down, and down, and down, away from you. You inhale deeply through your abdomen. Your eyes blink. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Eventually you adjust to the harsh white light. There's soft pieces of something lying around you. You can taste iron in the air. You move your lower sets of legs around to rearrange yourself, to step out of the pile. You reach out your tongue down to the hard white ground, tasting one of the soft pieces. It is sweet. Story 2. It all started after moving into my new house. Yeah, that's pretty cliche. Believe me, I know, but it's what happened. I never experienced anything supernatural before, and though interested, I never really expected anything to happen to me. I was able to rent the house for pretty cheap. I didn't think anything of it because it was old and not in the best of neighborhoods, so I guessed I just got a good deal. After moving everything in, things were fine for a while. I don't remember exactly when it started because it seemed so minor at the time. I'd leave a light on in the kitchen or the bathroom and come back to find it off. Honestly, I thought I was just forgetting that I turned them off already when I came back. After a while, I began to wonder and started leaving a couple lights on purpose. Sometimes, nothing would happen. Sometimes, I'd come back to find the lights turned off. By now, I figured out that something was off. I wasn't really scared, but just confused. I thought maybe something was wrong with the electronics. I started leaving lights on a bit more often because I thought I might be able to get some sign of why they would randomly shut off. That's when it started to take another turn. The first real time I remember something crazy happening was when I left the kitchen and living room light on while I was asleep. I woke up to a deep, rumbling growl coming from the kitchen. Now from the bedroom, you can see down the hall to the living room, and that room is connected to the kitchen. I remember waking up and thinking that there was an animal or something in my house. I looked down the hall toward the living room to see the light darken. Somebody had flicked off the light from the kitchen. Another low growl came, this time from the living room, and I nearly screamed as I saw something bolt across the length of the hall opening, and then the living room light went out. I couldn't tell exactly what it was, though. It just seemed like a black shadow or something. It didn't really matter. I was scared shitless. I bolted from my bed then and threw on the bedroom light, expecting something to be in this room and getting ready to come after me. Nothing. There wasn't anything in the room. I let out a low breath, and then I slowly moved down the hall into the living room. Once I got to the end, I practically ran to throw on the light switch there. Again, nothing. Kitchen next, and once again, nothing. I was starting to think I dreamed all of it before I went to turn off the kitchen light and stopped. Now, I was a grown man, but here I was terrified to turn off that switch. And I'll admit it, I slept with all the lights on that night. That was a mistake. When I woke up the next morning, all the lights were off once again. I went to push myself out of bed and winced as my body felt sore. I pulled the sheets off to see long red marks running down along my legs and arms. It looked like something scratched me in the night. That terrified the hell out of me, but not nearly so much as what I saw around the house. Every light I left on was smashed. Every light bulb that was on last night was broken. Every lamp knocked over and smashed in. My breath caught in my throat as I looked around. Something was fucked up as hell here, and something tried to, well, do something to me. I called in for work that day and went to immediately replace all the lights. I didn't know what to do then. I thought about leaving, and I know this probably sounds stupid, but this was my home. It was my first time away from my family, and this was my home. I couldn't give it up. So, I stayed, even as it got worse. Even though I was beginning to become terrified of the dark, I couldn't really sleep with the light on me at night in the bedroom. I'd leave other lights on though, like in the hall or the living room, giving myself enough to see pretty well in my darker room. And, almost every night, I'd wake up in the middle of the night to hear something growling and prowling around the living room, and then the lights would shut off. I didn't want to go look. I was terrified at the thought of being in the same room with whatever was in there. So I curled up in bed and prayed it never came in. One night, after this went on for a while, I had it. I bought a gun and turned on every light in the house. Then I sat down in the middle of the living room with my gun in my lap and a baseball bat sitting next to me. I waited. There was nothing at first for a long time. At around 2 a.m, I began to hear it. Oddly, it was behind me. I turned and peeked toward the hall to my bedroom and could hear that familiar growl. I swallowed and held my gun in one hand and the bat in the other, and slowly began to step around to get a better view of bedroom from the living room. As I began to get a view of my bed, I heard a loud thump, followed by an inhuman roar. I, being the brave man I was, jumped back and away from the hallway. I wanted to end this all, but, dear God, I didn't want to deal with that thing. I could hear tearing and smashing, and I don't know how I caught it, but I did manage to hear an audible click. And then nothing. Slowly, I went back to peek down the hall, and the light was off once again. A deep breath, and I ventured forth, my weapons ready. When I came to my bedroom and flicked the light back on, I gasped. My bed was ravaged, torn completely apart. It was like some animal had jumped into it and just ripped it to shreds. I stepped forward to look at what was left of my bed, and just stood in shock for who knows when. It wasn't until I heard the sound of a familiar growl that I turned around. Standing near my door, right at the light switch, was when I finally saw it. It was a man, a white and rotting man with a mangled body that looked like he had once been a dog's chew toy staring at me. I was too in shock to even raise my weapons. He stared at me for just a moment and then flicked off the light. I screamed. I'm not even ashamed to admit it. I screamed and bolted. I didn't care if that was where that man had been standing. I ran right past where I had seen him, swinging my bat like a madman. I nearly put a hole in the hallway as I ran through into the safe light of the hall. I turned to look back then, just in time to see him once again near the hall's light switch. He turned that one off too. By then, I didn't want to fight. I wanted to be safe. I burst past the living room and into the brightness of my kitchen. I heard the sound of growling and scratching nearly all around me then, and I knew he was coming back. I looked back to once again see that mangled and rotten corpse of a man turn off another light with a broken finger and plunge me into terrifying darkness. I broke for the living room. This was going to be my final stand. I'd have to fight here. I drew close to the standing lamp that was my last line of defense. It hated the dark, so I'd stay right here, next to this comforting standing lamp. I waited for it to turn off, but it never did. I looked around and quiet. Nothing but quiet. I turned then to look at that saving grace of a lamp that refused to yield. I started to find myself laughing. A crazy but alive laugh, and I thought I'd finally be okay. I stepped closer and I swear I almost hugged that lamp, until I saw it. I heard the growl first coming not from behind me but in front, from that lamp. My eyes widened and I stared as the light from that lamp intensified. I stumbled back and I don't know what happened, but I think I tripped on something. I just know I found myself flat on my back staring up at that bright, intense light. It wasn't comforting any longer, just hot and heavy and bright. I thought it was going to burn me away. And then it came. I don't have words to describe what poured from that lamp's light. It was hideous, twisted, and filled with rage. I know I'll never forget those eyes, though. Bright, hot, and white. Two glowing circles of pure malice. It hated me. It hated everything about me. And not just me. It hated all of us. Every human being. But it was stuck here. And it would lash out at what it could. Me. I don't know how I knew this, but I just knew. I lunged for me and I prepared myself for a painful death. Click. The light went out. Once again came darkness. Sweet, quiet, relaxing darkness. I stayed on the ground for a long moment, letting my eyes adjust as I kept my gaze fixated on where my standing lamp was. As the seconds passed, I could start to make him out. That mangled man standing by the lamp, one torn hand upon the switch as he looked down at me. I understood then. I understood what it all meant. Everything that happened. The man pulled his hand away from it and then pointed a mangled finger toward it before, very clearly, shaking his head from side to side. All I could find myself doing was nodding. He wasn't the one trying to harm me. All this time, all those instances, he was trying to protect me. That creature could only come in the light. And this mangled man had been trying to keep me safe. He didn't want someone else to repeat his mistakes. I moved out the very next day and never looked back. Whatever it was confined to that house, and, so far, nothing has come at me from another light source. However, that thing will always stick with me in my mind. Every night in my new apartment, I made a habit of wandering around the house, making sure every light is off, every curtain is closed, and made sure to plunge myself in quiet, comforting, and safe pitch darkness.